Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be transforming a pair of pants into a convertible skirt. And what I mean by that is we're actually going to be making a skirt that you can change the length all the way down to the floor. This is also a super fun and easy upcycle project, so if you're new to sewing, you should have no problem following the easy step-by-step tutorial. With all that being said, let's get started. Getting started with supplies, you'll need one pair of pants, and you could use any style of pants for this project. If you want the end dress to be a little bit more flowy, then I recommend grabbing a baggier pair of pants. Essentially, this will give you more fabric to work with. The pair of pants I'm using has pockets on the side, so the first thing we're going to do is start to remove the pockets. And the easiest way to do this is just use a dethreader and work all the way around the perimeter of the pocket. Now these pockets can be re-added in future steps, so for the moment we can just place them off to the side. And then continue removing any other pockets that are on the pants. Once you have all the pockets removed, the next step is figuring out where you want to cut the pant legs off. It basically goes like this: the more of the pant leg you cut off, the more material you have to work with. So what I like to do is measure down about 2 to 3 inches from the center seam on the inseam and then make my cut there. Then I take that pant leg, place it on the opposite pant leg, and make my second cut. Now that we have both of the pant legs cut, we can place them off to the side for future steps. The next thing we want to do is dethread the inseam, and we're trying to keep this as intact as possible, so take your time. From here, we're going to move up to the center seam, and we're going to dethread all the way up to the bottom of the fly. Try not to go too far up and cause damage to the fly. The main goal is to get these two panels to overlap and sit flat, so you shouldn't need to go any further than the bottom of the fly. From here, we're going to flip it over to the back side and do the same exact thing. Dethread the center seam up to the center of the pockets. Again, the main goal is just to get these two sides to sit flat once you overlap them, so you may not need to even go all the way up to the center of the pockets. With the back panels laying flat, we're going to add pins to the center seam. And you may need to remove the pins and readjust it as you're sewing, but what we're going to do is sew directly on top of the old stitch paths. This side has a double stitch, so we're going to add 2 separate stitches. Flip it around to the front and do the same exact thing. Roll the ends inward so the clean side is facing up and add a couple pins. This side also has a double stitch, so we're going to add 2 separate stitches. And I recommend matching the thread color to what was on the pants, so that way it blends perfectly. For example, there's a tan top stitching on this pair of pants, so I used a tan top stitching. You might not have the exact match, but anything close does look good. Next, we're going to flip it back around to the front and clean up the bottom edge. There's going to be overhang on the back panel, so we're going to trim it flush with the front panel. At this point, if you're just trying to make a simple skirt, it's totally complete. The last thing you need to do is hem the bottom edge, or keep it raw if you want it to fray over time. But we're going to keep building on the design, so for the moment we can place this top section off to the side and grab both of the pant legs. Locate the side seam that does not have top stitching. If both of your side seams has top stitching, then you can pick either one. And what I'm doing is trying to keep that top stitching intact so we can use it within the design. But anyways, I'm going to be cutting directly in the seam on the side that does not have the top stitching. This will allow us to open up both of those leg panels and give us a nice big piece of fabric to work with. And as you can see, since this pair of pants was on the baggier side, it's a way bigger piece of fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do is wrap it around the bottom edge of the skirt, one panel at a time, and I will be doing this on a dress forms just so it's a little bit easier to see. And I'm trying to wrap it around perfectly so I have one half of the pant leg on one side of the skirt and the other half on the opposite, so they line up center back and center front. More than likely you will have extra fabric in the back, so you're going to have to roll it inwards and mark where it meets. Make a mark at the top and the bottom's going to be a little bit more than the top because you want this skirt to wrap around to give you room to walk. Whereas the top, we just want that to be the same circumference as the bottom of the skirt. And for the front, I will be keeping the split and open, so I just want to mark where it meets at the top. And these markings don't have to be 100% accurate because we can always adjust them in future steps. Now we can place the right side together, lining up the outside edges perfectly, and move to the back markings. As you can see, my top marking is way further in than my bottom marking, so what I'm going to be doing is sewing on an angle to meet up with the bottom marking. And for the front portion, it's not going to be sewn because it will be open, but I'm going to be cleaning up those edges with a serger. So I'm going to serge the back from the top to the bottom, and then serge each one of the front edges separately just to clean up those raw edges. If you don't have a serger, you can use a zigzag stitch instead. Feel free to grab the skirt at this step and double check to make sure the circumference of the top edge is correct. If everything is correct, we're going to open up the panel, locate the seam we just created, move the seam allowance to the left or the right, and add a top stitch. Again, it's best to match the thread color to what's on the pants. This top stitch is not mandatory, but it really brings out a complete look. So feel free to skip it if you're going for a different look. At this point, I'm going to flip it back around to the front, grab my skirt, and wrap it around the bottom edge of the skirt just to double check that everything meets up in the center front. If done correctly, it should meet in the center front with a little extra space so we can roll those front edges inward to create a hem. If you have way too much fabric, that's totally fine. You can always trim it until it lines up. But for the moment, we can place the top section off to the side and focus on hemming those edges. Since I cleaned the edge up with the serger, I'm just going to be rolling them over once. And the length of the hem is really based on how much room you have to work with to match the circumference of the bottom of the skirt. But anyways, once you have both sides rolled over, we're going to stitch directly on top of the hem. And try to make it as neat as possible because this will be front and center on your skirt. After finishing up the stitch, double check both sides, make sure the hem is looking nice and clean. You may even want to check it one more time with the top section just to make sure everything checks out and the circumferences are correct. And if you like this look as is, you can actually just sew the bottom section onto the top section and be done, but we're going to be taking another step further. And for this next step, we're actually going to be splitting up the bottom section into multiple sections. I'm going to be dividing it into 4 equal part sections. You don't have to do 4, you can do 3, you can do 2, or you can just keep it as 1 and keep moving on to the next step. I'm just trying to incorporate a variety of lengths of skirt into this one skirt, so that's why I'm doing 4 sections. Once you have everything mapped out and marked with chalk, we're going to split it up and cut each section. Try to make the cuts as neat as possible. For the next step, we only need the top section so we can place the other 3 off to the side. Open up the panel with right sides facing up and the top facing away from you. To get these sections to attach, we're going to be using zippers. If you don't want to use zippers, you can also use Velcro. If you are using zippers, you want them to be the exact length as the panel. I'm going to start by adding a zipper to the top edge, and for this zipper, we're going to place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the fabric, place a few pins, and then stitch directly on top of the zipper at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I just lined the edge of the zipper up with the top of the panel. Flip the zipper upward so the right side is facing up. Now that we have a clean edge, we're going to add a top stitch by stitching directly on top of the seam allowance. This will also cover up the raw edge on the inside. If you are using a pair of pants that has a lot of stretch, you may need to add a lot of pins when you're adding the zipper so that way it doesn't overstretch the pants as you're sewing the zipper, because this can cause the zipper and the panel not to line up. But anyways, moving on to the next step, grab your second zipper, and the zipper probably will be a different length than the first zipper, so you're going to want to measure these before you buy them. We're also going to be sewing this one a little bit differently. We're going to be placing the right side of the zipper to the wrong side of the fabric, and lining the bottom edge of the zipper up with the bottom edge of the panel, and then sewing on the top edge of the zipper. And the reason for this is that I want that raw edge to be exposed and the zipper hidden under that flap. If it looks kind of confusing, you may need to watch this through before you start sewing. This panel is essentially complete, so we're going to keep doing the same process all the way down with the rest of the section. So grab the second section in line, flip the panel around so the right side is facing up, and locate the top edge. And we're going to be sewing the edge onto the bottom of the last zipper with right sides together. So place the right side together, lining up the zipper edge and the top edge of the panel, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, use plenty of pins so the layers don't shift as you sew them. Just like with the first zipper, we're going to add a top stitch to the section we just sewed on. So fold the seam allowance away from the zipper and add your top stitch. We're essentially going to keep repeating the same process all the way down with the rest of the sections. So the next thing we have to do is grab the third zipper and sew it onto the bottom edge of the second section, just like we did with the bottom edge of the first one. Place the right side of the zipper to the wrong side of the fabric, and then we're going to line it up with the bottom edge and add our stitch. And the main goal is just to hide that zipper under that flap. If you don't like this look and you want all the zippers exposed, then you're going to sew them all the same exact way as we did the first one, with right sides together and adding a top stitch for each section. Continuing the process, grab the third panel, place the right sides together, lining up the top edge of the panel. With the bottom half of the zipper, stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip the right sides out, and add a top stitch. And I sped it up a little bit more just because it's going to be the same thing for the final panel. Add one more zipper to the bottom edge, grab your final panel, and then sew that panel to the bottom half of the zipper. It's all going to be done in the same exact order as what we just did in the previous steps. And like I said before, if you did less sections, then you may already be done at this point. But this is what 4 sections look like after sewing on all of the zippers. The next thing we have to do is attach the top section to the bottom of the skirt, so I like to unzip the bottom half so there's less fabric to move around as you're sewing. Flip the top section around to the back side, locate the center, and I like to start by lining up both of the centers on the bottom panel and the top panel. Place a pin, flip it around back to the front side, and line it up in the center front. If everything was sewn correctly in previous steps, then it should line up perfectly. We'll be sewing this top edge just like we did with the previous step, so we're going to place the right side of the zipper to the wrong side of the fabric so the fabric overlaps the zipper, and then add your stitch. To get it to line up perfectly, you may want to start in the center back and work your way out from that center point. After sewing, double check both sides, make sure everything is looking nice and even, because at this point you can always de-thread it and try it again. From here you can zip on the rest of the bottom and try it on. Before we move on to the final steps, I want to quickly show you a fun thing you can do if you have extra fabric laying around. You'll need a few more zippers, but essentially what you do is unzip a section and use that as a template to cut out your new fabric. From there you attach your zippers and then you zip it onto your skirt. It's just a fun way to break up the fabric and really customize it to your style, and especially it's fun to do if you have extra fabric laying around. Or you can even split these sections down the center and add new sections in between to make it really long. The possibilities are endless, and for the final step, I added branding. I just used leather tabs added with double-sided rivets. I also went ahead and added zipper pulls. This is a really good feature to add. It makes it easier to zip off the sections. Another fun way to brand it is screen printing, because each one of these sections can zip off so you can lay it flat and screen print any part. Also, the exposed edges will fray better over time after a few times through the wash. So in my opinion, it's going to look a lot better and more complete once those edges all fluff up. But like always, get creative, have some fun with this project, and let me know how it goes in the comments. And there you have it, your convertible skirt is complete. Hopefully you had some fun with this project. I just thought it was a fun idea and wanted to put it out there. Maybe you'll get inspired and make something totally different. Like I said in the video, it could be a really fun thing to swap out the different layers and different fabrics, because once you have the template, you can realistically make as many as you want. But like always, I want to see what you come up with, so tag me on Instagram at ProperFitClothing, and until then, I'm going to keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.